My son scheduled a family dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, but when I arrived, there was no seat reserved for me. My daughter-in-law, Victoria, smiled with contempt and told me that perhaps a cheaper place would be better for me. I began to laugh, a laugh that came from the depths of my wounded soul. Everyone looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Then I walked over to the owner and asked for the best available table. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Elias, my trusted partner of 15 years, approached immediately. My sons didn't know that this elegant restaurant where they had just humiliated me was mine, that every dish they served, every glass of wine they drank, every cent they spent went directly into my bank account. I am Teresa. I am 69 years old, and I have just discovered the true face of the children for whom I sacrificed my entire life. I was widowed at 30 with 3 young children, Daniel, Mark, and my little Elena, who died of pneumonia because I didn't have money for a private hospital. From that day on, I swore my sons would never want for anything. I worked as a housekeeper for 40 years. 40 years washing, ironing, cleaning other people's houses, while my hands cracked and my back stooped. 40 years of getting up at 5 in the morning to make them breakfast before I left for work. While other mothers took their children to the park, I scrubbed strangers' bathrooms. While they enjoyed family vacations, I worked extra weekends to pay for their school field trips. I paid for private university for both of them. Daniel studied business administration, Mark engineering. I bought them their first cars. I gave them the down payment for their condos. I paid for their lavish weddings. I gave them the life I never had, the life I dreamed of but sacrificed for them. Daniel graduated and got a job at a major bank. He married Victoria, a cold woman who saw me as a threat from day one, as if I were going to take something she considered hers. Mark followed in his brother's footsteps. He was always weaker, always needing someone else to make decisions for him. 6 months ago, I retired, officially. Because the truth is, for 15 years, I stopped depending solely on my housekeeper's salary. But they don't know that. Nobody knows. I prefer they believe I'm a poor, dependent old woman. It's better to see people's true colors when they think you have nothing to offer. Victoria called me last Tuesday with that sweet, fake voice she uses when she needs something. Teresa, dear mother-in-law, we've organized a family dinner to celebrate Daniel's promotion at the bank. It will be at the Terrace, you know the place, Saturday at 8. Of course, I knew it. Better than she could ever imagine. I arrived on time, as always, dressed in my best clothes, which to them were still the clothes of a housekeeper. I approached the table, where they were all seated. Daniel, Victoria, Mark, and his girlfriend Sarah. There were 5 occupied chairs and none free. "Excuse me," I said. "I think there's a chair missing." Daniel looked up from his wine glass and gave me an expression I had learned to recognize all too well. That mix of annoyance and embarrassment that always appeared when I was present in front of his friends or colleagues. "Mom," he said, "we thought maybe it would be better if you had dinner somewhere else. This restaurant is quite exclusive. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Victoria nodded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Exactly, Teresa. Perhaps a cheaper place would be better for you. Something more appropriate for your situation." The words hit me like slaps to the face. Mark said nothing, just looked away. A coward, as always. Sarah looked uncomfortable, but didn't dare contradict Victoria. The other guests lowered their heads, ashamed of the spectacle they were witnessing. Then I began to laugh. A laugh that started softly and grew louder, deeper, until the entire restaurant fell silent, looking at me. Daniel watched me with a mixture of confusion and panic, as if he had suddenly realized something was terribly wrong. Victoria frowned, clearly annoyed that her plan to humiliate me wasn't going as expected. I walked slowly toward the host stand, where Elias was waiting for me with that professional smile I knew so well. "Excuse me," I said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I would like the main table, the one in the center of the room." Elias nodded immediately. "Of course, Mrs. Teresa. Your usual table is ready." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw Daniel's eyes go wide as dinner plates, Victoria turn pale, and Mark drop his fork on the floor. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that Teresa, the housekeeper, had secrets that could destroy their world of lies and appearances. 15 years ago, while they were busy building their perfect lives with the money I gave them, I began to invest my savings. Not in just anything. I invested in properties, in businesses, in places like the Terrace, the exclusive restaurant where they had just told me I didn't belong. But let's leave that for later. First, you need to understand who these people I call my sons really are. Daniel, my firstborn, the one I held in my arms during feverish nights when I had no money for a private doctor. The same one who now wears $1,000 suits and is ashamed to introduce me to his colleagues from the bank. Victoria, his wife, comes from a middle-class family that always believed they were better than they were. When she married Daniel, she thought she had won the lottery. A successful man, with a good job, with property. What she didn't know was that everything Daniel had was given to him by his mother, the housekeeper. I paid the down payment on their condo. I bought his first car. I financed their honeymoon in Europe. Mark, my baby, the more sensitive one, who used to cry when I came home late from work. Now he's a 35-year-old man who can't make a decision without first consulting his older brother. His girlfriend, Sarah, is a sweet girl, but weak. She doesn't have the personality to stand up to Victoria when she decides to humiliate her mother-in-law. For years, I was the perfect future grandmother for their children, the one who would babysit for free, cook on Sundays, and always be available whenever they needed me. But now that I was retired, now that, according to them, I no longer produced money, I had become a burden, an embarrassment to be hidden. Last week, Daniel visited me at my apartment. "Mom," he said, "Victoria and I have been talking. We think it would be better if you moved to a smaller place, something more affordable. We could help you find a nursing home that's nice, but not too expensive." A nursing home. After 40 years of sacrifice, after giving them everything I had and didn't have, they wanted to put me in a nursing home so they could go on with their lives without the burden of a mother who was no longer useful to them. Mark agreed, of course. "It's for the best, Mom. You'll be surrounded by people your age. You'll have activities. You won't be alone in that big apartment." What he didn't say was that my apartment, which they considered too big for me, was the same one where I raised them. The same one where I spent sleepless nights when they had fevers. The same one where I cried in silence so they wouldn't hear me after working 16 hours straight. That night, after they left, I sat in my kitchen and made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like a stranger, as if I hadn't sacrificed my entire life for them, then it was time they met the real Teresa. Not the submissive housekeeper they had taken for granted for decades, but the woman who had managed to build an empire in secret while they thought she was a poor, helpless old woman. Because you see, dear sons, while you were spending the money I gave you, I was investing the rest. While you were building your lives of appearances, I was building my future. And that future included owning several businesses in the city, including the restaurant where they had just humiliated me. The expression on Daniel's face when Elias personally escorted me to the main table was something I will never forget. His eyes darted frantically between the manager and me, as if trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Victoria had completely lost her arrogant smirk and was now looking at me with a mixture of confusion and growing terror. I sat at the best table in the restaurant, the one normally reserved for celebrities and important politicians. Elias snapped his fingers, and 3 waiters appeared immediately. "The premium wine list, Mrs. Teresa?" he asked with the deference shown only to the true owners. "Of course, Elias. And also bring a bottle of the 2010 Chateau Margaux for the table over there, on the house." I pointed to where my sons were sitting. Their faces now reflected absolute panic. Daniel rose from his chair and walked toward my table with hesitant steps. "Mom," he whispered, "what's going on here? How do they know you so well? Why are they treating you like I'm the owner?" I completed his sentence with a serene smile. "Because I am, Daniel. I have been the majority partner of the Terrace for 15 years. Every time you've come here to celebrate your promotions, your anniversaries, your professional achievements, you've been spending money in my restaurant. Every bottle of wine you've drunk, every gourmet dish you've tasted, has gone straight into my bank account." Daniel's face completely fell. "That's impossible," he stammered. You clean houses for a living. You don't have the money for something like this." "Ah, my dear son," I replied, "there is your first mistake. Assuming that because I cleaned other people's houses, I was poor. Assuming that because I sacrificed for you, I was stupid. Victoria staggered over, clearly in shock. But, Teresa, how is it possible that you have the money to buy a restaurant like this? Where did you get so much money? Her voice had lost all its previous arrogance and now sounded small, frightened. It's very simple, my dear daughter-in-law. While you were spending the money I gave your husband, I was saving every spare cent. While you were living your lives of luxury, thinking it was your natural right, I was investing in properties, in businesses, in the future you thought I didn't have. But this doesn't end here. Oh no, this is just the beginning. Because you see, for all these years I haven't just been a housekeeper. I've been a silent observer. I've seen how you treat me when you think you need something from me, and how you treat me when you think I'm of no use to you. 3 months ago, I lost my office cleaning job because the company went bankrupt. I didn't tell you anything because I wanted to see what your natural reaction would be. I wanted to see if you would offer help, if you would worry about my well-being, if you would at least ask how I was surviving. Instead, you took advantage of what you thought was my vulnerability to try and get rid of me. Daniel, do you remember our conversation last week? You suggested a nursing home. You told me it would be better for me to be surrounded by people my age. What you were really telling me is that you wanted me out of your life because you no longer considered me useful. Mark finally found the courage to approach our table. Mom, he mumbled, we didn't mean to. We thought it would be better for you. I cut him off with an icy stare. Mark, dear, for 40 years I have known exactly what was best for me, working until I was exhausted so you could have everything you wanted, sacrificing my dreams so you could pursue yours. But apparently, when it comes to deciding about my own life, I'm suddenly too senile to know what's good for me. Elias discreetly leaned in close to my ear. Mrs. Teresa, there are journalists at the entrance. It seems someone leaked that you are here. Perfect, I whispered back. Let them in. It's time the whole city knew who the real Teresa is. Victoria's eyes filled with tears of pure panic. Teresa, please, she begged. Don't make this public. Daniel could lose his job at the bank if it gets in the papers that… That what, Victoria? That he humiliated his own mother in public? That he tried to kick her out of a restaurant she owned? That he treated her like a beggar after she financed his entire education and lifestyle? But don't worry, my dear daughter-in-law. This is just getting started. Because it turns out the terrace isn't my only investment. I have other businesses, other properties, other surprises you can't even imagine. And now that you've shown your true colors, now that you've made it clear what you really think of me, it's time for you to learn the consequences of underestimating the woman who gave you life. The journalists swarmed into the restaurant like an avalanche. Cameras, flashes, microphones pointed toward our table. Daniel tried to hide behind his napkin, but it was too late. Victoria covered her face with her hands, desperately whispering that this would ruin her social reputation. Mark just stood there paralyzed, as he always did when things got complicated. Mrs. Teresa, a reporter shouted, is it true that you are the owner of the terrace and other exclusive establishments in the city? I stood up with the dignity I had lost during decades of silent humiliations. That is correct. I have been the majority partner of this restaurant for 15 years. I also have investments in other businesses that my children were completely unaware of. But that's not the most interesting part of this story, another journalist continued. We've been informed that just a few minutes ago, your own sons tried to throw you out of the restaurant, claiming you didn't fit in at such an exclusive place. My smile widened. Exactly. My sons, for whom I sacrificed 40 years of my life, believed they had the right to publicly humiliate me in my own establishment. The cameras immediately turned to Daniel and Victoria. Sir, is it true that you tried to kick your mother out of the restaurant? They asked Daniel. His face was completely red, a mixture of shame and terror. We didn't know. It was a misunderstanding. It was no misunderstanding, I interrupted with a clear, firm voice. It was a calculated humiliation. They told me to find a cheaper place, more appropriate for my situation. They suggested McDonald's as a more suitable alternative for my social standing. All of this in front of other diners, to maximize my embarrassment. The journalist's outrage was palpable. One of them turned directly to Victoria. Ma'am, what do you have to say about the fact that you suggested your mother-in-law, who apparently financed your family's lifestyle, should eat at McDonald's instead of joining you for a family dinner? Victoria stammered incomprehensibly. I, we, it wasn't our intention. We thought she would be more comfortable. Her words sounded pathetic even to her. I had seen her use that same emotional manipulation tactic on me for years, but in front of the cameras, she was exposed for what she truly was, a cruel and calculating woman. But wait, there's more, I told the reporters. 1 week ago, these same sons, who humiliated me publicly today, came to my home to suggest that I move into a nursing home. According to them, it would be better for me to be surrounded by people my age, instead of living alone in an apartment that was too large for a retired housekeeper. The cameras perfectly captured the look of horror on Mark's face. "Mom, please," he begged. "Don't say that on television. They'll think we're monsters." "You are," I replied without hesitation. "You are exactly that, monsters that I created without realizing it, by giving you everything without teaching you the value of sacrifice." Mrs. Teresa, a veteran journalist, asked, "How long have you been planning this revelation?" The question made me smile bitterly. I didn't plan it. For years, I kept my investments a secret because I wanted to protect my children from the envy and problems that money can bring. I wanted them to build their own lives based on their merits, not on my wealth. But when I lost my job 3 months ago and told them nothing, when I watched how they reacted, believing I was in a vulnerable situation, when I saw that their first response was to try and get rid of me instead of offering support, I understood that I had raised 2 strangers, 2 people who only valued me for what I could give them, not for who I was. Daniel tried to approach me, probably to do some damage control, but Elias discreetly stepped in his way. The manager had worked with me long enough to understand that this confrontation had been brewing for years, and he was not going to let anyone interrupt it. "Ma'am," they asked Victoria, "did you know that your mother-in-law had these properties and investments? Why do you think she never mentioned it?" Victoria looked at Daniel for help, but he was too busy trying to avoid the cameras. We always thought Teresa was just a housekeeper. She never told us she had money." "Exactly," I confirmed. "I never told you because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer. And now, I know. Now I know that the filial love I thought existed was actually financial dependence disguised as affection." A young journalist raised his microphone. "Mrs. Teresa, what will happen now with your family relationship?" My answer was clear and definitive. There is no family relationship to save. They made their decision when they chose to humiliate me publicly. I am making mine now. From this moment on, Daniel and Mark are no longer my sons, and Victoria is no longer part of my family. The silence that followed was sepulchral. The cameras perfectly captured the moment when 2 adult men realized they had just lost not only their mother, but also the secret financial support that had sustained their lives for decades. The news went viral in a matter of hours. Videos of the confrontation in the restaurant circulated on all social media platforms with titles like "Housekeeper reveals she's a millionaire after her sons humiliate her," and "A betrayed mother's perfect revenge." The comments were merciless toward Daniel and Victoria. People were outraged by the level of cruelty shown to a mother who had sacrificed everything for her children. The next day, Daniel received a call from his boss at the bank. The institution couldn't afford to have employees involved in public scandals of family mistreatment. His image was completely destroyed, and his position at the bank was untenable. He was suspended indefinitely while they evaluated his future with the company. Victoria faced even worse consequences. Her high-class social circle completely repudiated her. The wives of Daniel's colleagues, who used to invite her to their exclusive luncheons and charity events, now avoided her as if she were radioactive. Her membership at the tennis club was revoked, and her name was removed from the lists of the city's most important charity galas. Meanwhile, I checked into the most luxurious hotel in the city, the same one where years ago I cleaned rooms as a housekeeper. Now I occupied the presidential suite, looking out over the city from the 30th floor, planning my next moves with the coldness of a military strategist. Mark tried desperately to call me. His voicemails were pathetic. "Mom, please, forgive us. We didn't know what we were doing. We can fix this. We're family." But real family doesn't humiliate you in public. Real family doesn't abandon you when they think you're no longer useful. Real family doesn't suggest nursing homes as a solution to their own shame. My lawyer, Ezekiel Vance, arrived at the hotel on Tuesday morning with a satisfied smile. "Teresa," he said, "I've reviewed all the documents you asked for. Indeed, both Daniel and Mark are listed as beneficiaries of several of your investments and properties. The condo where Daniel lives, the car he drives, even his savings account has automatic monthly contributions from you that they were unaware of." "Perfect," I replied. "I want you to cancel all those benefits immediately. Let them support themselves, like the independent adults they claim to be." Ezekiel nodded, clearly enjoying the case. "I've also been investigating their personal finances. Without your secret contributions, Daniel won't be able to maintain his lifestyle for even 3 months. The condo where he lives is in your name. Technically, he's just a tenant without a lease." That same afternoon, Victoria showed up at the hotel begging for an audience. I received her in the lobby, in public, so she couldn't make a dramatic scene. "Teresa, please," she pleaded, tears in her eyes. "You have to understand our position. Daniel is going to lose his job. We'll have nowhere to live if you take the condo. We have debts, commitments." "How interesting," I replied with glacial calm. "Now you worry about the financial consequences. When I lost my job 3 months ago, your first concern was how to get rid of me, not how to help me. When you thought I had no money, your reaction was public humiliation. Now that you know I do have resources, you come with crocodile tears." Daniel appeared behind her, clearly defeated. "Mom," he muttered, "I know we made terrible mistakes. But we're your blood. We're your sons. You can't destroy our lives like this." My laughter echoed through the hotel lobby. "Destroy your lives." Interesting choice of words. I'm not destroying anything. I am simply withdrawing the support you took for granted. You decided that Teresa, the housekeeper, didn't deserve a seat at your table. Perfect. Now you will discover what life is like without Teresa, the investor, maintaining your luxuries from the shadows. You will learn to live on your own resources, just as I did for 40 years when I supported you. Victoria tried one last desperate tactic. "Teresa, if you do this, if you take everything from us, you'll suffer too. People will think you're a cruel mother who abandons her children." My smile grew even colder. "My dear Victoria, the people already know exactly who abandoned whom. The videos are all over social media. The entire world saw how you tried to kick me out of my own restaurant." That night, from my suite, I called Elias to coordinate the next steps. The media wanted exclusive interviews. Television producers were offering documentaries about my story. Magazine editors wanted articles about how I built my empire in secret while working as a housekeeper. But I had more ambitious plans. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about rebuilding my life without the emotional leeches that had been draining my energy for decades. It was about proving that a 69-year-old woman could start over and be more powerful than ever. The next day, the next phase of my plan would begin. Daniel and Mark were about to find out that underestimating their mother had been the costliest mistake of their lives. The digital war began when Daniel and Victoria decided to create their own narrative on social media. Desperate to save their reputations, they posted a tearful video on Instagram presenting themselves as victims of a vengeful and manipulative mother. Daniel talked about how I had kept my wealth a secret to control them psychologically, while Victoria sobbed about how a real mother would never abandon her children over a simple misunderstanding. The video accumulated thousands of views in a few hours, but not with the reaction they expected. The comments were brutal. People vividly remembered the images of them kicking me out of the restaurant, suggesting McDonald's as a more appropriate alternative for my social class. Their attempts at victimhood only worsened their public image. But I had something they didn't know existed. For years, every time they came to visit me at my apartment, every time they made disparaging comments about my work or my lifestyle, I had recorded our conversations. Not out of malice, but because my memory wasn't what it used to be, and I wanted to remember the important things my sons told me. I never imagined those recordings would become my most powerful weapon. Ezekiel helped me create my own YouTube channel. At 69 years old, I became an influencer out of necessity. My first video was titled "The Truth Behind the Crocodile Tears." I published it on a Thursday night, and by Friday morning, it had 500,000 views. In the video, I played audio recordings where Daniel told me verbatim that I was a financial burden, where Victoria mocked my cheap clothes in front of her friends, where Mark suggested it would be better for everyone if I moved far away because my presence embarrassed them when important guests visited. The most devastating recording was from 3 weeks before the restaurant incident. Daniel had come to my apartment supposedly to visit, but in reality, he wanted to go through my finances to calculate how much it would cost to keep me in a nursing home. In the audio, you could clearly hear him rummaging through my drawers looking for bank statements, while commenting that people my age often develop dementia, and it was important for the family to control their resources before they squandered them. The public's reaction was immediate and devastating for my sons. Justice for Teresa became a global trending topic. Thousands of people shared their own stories of ungrateful children, sacrificed parents, and dysfunctional families. My story had touched a universal nerve of family pain. International media began to call me. CNN wanted an exclusive interview. Univision offered me a 1-hour special. Netflix approached me with a proposal for a documentary about my life. Suddenly, Teresa, the housekeeper, had become a global symbol of maternal dignity and generational justice. Meanwhile, the consequences for Daniel and Victoria multiplied exponentially. The bank where Daniel worked issued a public statement completely disassociating itself from him. They couldn't afford to have their corporate name associated with someone who had publicly humiliated his elderly mother. His dismissal became final. Victoria lost her part-time job at an art gallery. The owners, a wealthy elderly couple, were personally offended by her behavior toward me. Her social circle had completely excluded her. None of her former friends answered her calls. Mark tried to publicly distance himself from his siblings, posting a video where he apologized and claimed he had been against mistreating me from the beginning. But I had recordings of him actively participating in conversations about sending me to a nursing home, where he laughed at my attempts to dress nicely for their family events. His apology video went viral for the wrong reasons. People ridiculed him for being a coward, for trying to save himself by throwing his siblings under the bus, for lying so brazenly when audio proof of his complicity existed. Sarah, his girlfriend, broke up with him after the scandal affected her job as a teacher. The parents of her students didn't want their children educated by someone associated with a family that mistreated the elderly. The social pressure became unbearable for her. On Friday night, I received a desperate call from all 3 of them. They had lost everything: jobs, relationships, reputations, social circles. They begged for a meeting to try and reach some kind of agreement. They wanted me to take down the recordings, to make a joint video talking about family reconciliation, to stop the media campaign that, according to them, was destroying their lives. I told them we could meet on Saturday, at the terrace, at my restaurant, on my territory, under my terms. Not to reconcile, but for them to listen to the conditions under which we could coexist on the same planet without me continuing to publicly expose every one of their misdeeds. They arrived on time, physically and emotionally shattered. Daniel had lost 20 pounds in 1 week. Victoria had deep dark circles under her eyes and had completely abandoned her pretensions of elegance. Mark looked like a ghost of his former self. They sat across from me at the same table where, 1 week earlier, they had tried to humiliate me. The irony was delicious. Now they were the ones who didn't fit in at this exclusive place. Now they were the ones who looked out of place, uncomfortable, defeated. They had one last chance at redemption. But the conditions were going to be very specific, very humiliating, and completely non-negotiable. I looked at them sitting across from me like scolded puppies and felt a strange mixture of power and sadness. These were the babies I had held in my arms, the children I had read bedtime stories to, the teenagers for whom I had worked double shifts to pay for their whims. Now they were strangers, begging for mercy from the woman they had tried to destroy. "All right," I said in a serene voice. "You are going to listen to my conditions without interrupting. First, you will make a public apology video where you specifically acknowledge each of your actions. No generalities, no euphemisms. You will say exactly how you treated me, why it was wrong, and why you deserve the consequences you are facing." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but I stopped him with a look. "Second, you will pay back every cent I have invested in your lives over the last 20 years. The condo, the cars, the weddings, the universities, the vacations, everything. My lawyer has already calculated the total sum with interest: $800,000. Victoria's face completely fell. Teresa, that's impossible, she whispered. We don't have that kind of money. Of course you don't, I replied, because you never learned how to earn it. You lived like parasites on my sacrifice for decades. Third, you will work to pay me back that debt. I have several businesses that need cleaning, maintenance, and kitchen staff. You will start from the bottom, as employees, earning minimum wage. Mark finally found his voice. Mom, you can't force us to work as housekeepers? I completed his sentence. Like what I was for 40 years to support you. Exactly that. You are going to learn what it means to get up at 5 in the morning, to work until your hands ache, to come home with no energy for anything else. Fourth, I continued, you will live in the same type of building where I lived when I was raising you. Small apartments, working-class neighborhoods, public transportation. You will experience the exact living conditions I had while you enjoyed luxuries paid for with my sweat. Victoria began to cry uncontrollably. This is pure revenge, she sobbed. This is cruelty. No, my dear, I replied. This is justice. Revenge would have been leaving you on the street with no chance to redeem yourselves. I am giving you the possibility to earn my forgiveness, but you are going to do it the hard way. Fifth, you will attend mandatory family therapy, not to reconcile immediately, but so you can understand the depth of the damage you caused. Sixth, you will do community service in nursing homes. You will care for people my age who have been abandoned by their families, so that you understand exactly what you wanted to turn me into. Daniel tried to negotiate. Mom, let's be reasonable. We can't meet all these conditions. It's too extreme. My laugh echoed through the restaurant. Extreme was suggesting McDonald's when I arrived for a family dinner. Extreme was planning to put me in a nursing home without consulting me. Extreme was publicly humiliating me in my own restaurant. Seventh, I continued relentlessly. You will sign legal documents renouncing any right to my assets when I die. You will not inherit a single cent. My fortune will go to charitable organizations that actually help working mothers and abandoned seniors. The silence that followed was absolute. The three of them looked at each other, mentally calculating if they had any options left. They were right to be terrified. Without my secret financial support, without jobs, without social circles, they faced total ruin. Eighth, if any of you tries to manipulate this situation, leak information to the media to play the victim, or break any of these conditions, I will publish the rest of the recordings I have. And believe me, there is enough material to keep this scandal alive for years. Victoria looked up with desperate eyes. How long would we have to do all this? Until I consider that you have learned your lesson, I replied. It could be months. It could be years. It's up to you to prove to me that you have truly changed, not just that you are feigning remorse out of desperation. Ninth, you will move out immediately, this very week. Ezekiel already has the rental agreements ready for your new apartments. They are modest but decent places, similar to where I lived when you were children. You will learn to live on a tight budget, to value every dollar you earn. 10th and last, you will work 6 days a week in my businesses, under the supervision of managers who report directly to me. You will not receive special treatment for being my children. In fact, you will be evaluated more strictly than any other employee. Mark asked in a broken voice. And if we do all this, will you really forgive us? Can we be a family again? I looked at him intently before answering. I don't know, Mark. Forgiveness cannot be guaranteed. It is earned day by day, with consistent actions, with real humility, with profound changes in character. You destroyed something that took decades to build. Rebuilding it, if it's even possible, will take a very long time. Daniel asked what they were all thinking, and if we refused to accept these conditions? My smile was icy. Then the media campaign continues. I publish the rest of the recordings, the videos of you mocking my clothes, laughing at my attempts to fit into your social world, planning how to get rid of me. Believe me, I have enough material to keep this scandal alive for years. The three of them looked at each other again. They had no choice, and they knew it. It was either accept my conditions or face total ruin with no possibility of redemption. After 2 hours of tense silence, Daniel was the first to speak. We accept, he muttered, his voice cracking. We accept all your conditions. Victoria and Mark nodded, defeated. They had no alternative. It was this or total ruin. Ezekiel, who had been waiting at a nearby table, approached with the contracts already prepared. Every clause was detailed, every condition legally specified. There would be no room for misunderstandings or later manipulations. They signed with trembling hands, sealing their fate for the next few years. On Monday morning, their new life began. Daniel was assigned to the cleaning crew at my corporate offices. The man who a week earlier wore $1,000 suits now wore a blue uniform and carried cleaning supplies. His former colleagues from the bank saw him mopping the lobby floors, and the humiliation in his eyes was visible from across the street. Victoria was sent to work in the kitchen of the Terrace, the very restaurant where she had humiliated me. She started by washing dishes, peeling vegetables, cleaning grease from the grills. Her hands, which had once only known expensive creams and weekly manicures, were now chapped from industrial detergent and nicked by kitchen knives. Mark was assigned to the maintenance of my real estate properties. He repaired pipes, painted walls, trimmed gardens. The physical labor left him exhausted at the end of each day. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to earn money by the sweat of his brow. The first few weeks were brutal for them. Their bodies weren't used to intense physical work. Daniel complained of back pain from bending over to clean floors. Victoria cried in secret over the hot oil burns on her arms. Mark developed calluses on hands that had previously only known computer keyboards. But the hardest part wasn't the physical work. It was the constant social humiliation. Customers at the Terrace recognized Victoria from the viral videos, and some took pictures of her washing dishes. The images circulated on social media with mocking comments about the fall of the woman who thought she was too elegant for her mother-in-law. Diego faced the morbid curiosity of his ex-colleagues. Some would walk by the building just to see him mopping, to confirm that the successful bank executive was now working as a janitor. His pictures appeared in group chats with messages like, "Look how the guy who kicked his mom out of her own restaurant ended up." Meanwhile, I moved into a mansion in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, a property I had bought years ago but had never lived in because I didn't want to arouse suspicion about my true financial situation. Now, free from maintaining the facade of a poor housekeeper, I could live openly according to my true means. The house had 10 bedrooms, sprawling gardens, a swimming pool, and a panoramic view of the city. It was everything I had dreamed of during those decades of living in small apartments and working in other people's houses. For the first time in 40 years, I had housekeepers working for me, instead of being the one working for others. I hired Maria, a 50-year-old woman who had lost her job during the pandemic and needed an opportunity. Unlike how my children treated me, I treated her with respect. I paid her a fair wage, gave her health benefits, and provided a comfortable room on the property. I wanted to prove that economic power didn't have to turn people into monsters without empathy. My international television interviews continued to make an impact. I appeared on shows with Oprah, Ellen, and several CNN specials. My story inspired millions of older women who felt invisible or devalued by their families. I received thousands of letters from women telling me their own experiences of unrecognized maternal sacrifice. I established a foundation called Invisible Mothers, which provided legal and financial support to older women facing family abandonment or economic abuse from their adult children. The response was overwhelming. Apparently, my situation was far more common than society wanted to admit. After 2 months of forced labor, my children requested a meeting. They wanted to show me they were changing, that they had learned their lesson. I received them in my new house, in the main living room overlooking the garden. It was important for them to see the contrast between my new, prosperous life and the modest conditions in which they now lived. They arrived tired, with chapped hands, stained work clothes, and a humility I had never seen in them. Daniel spoke first. "Mom, these last 2 months have been the hardest of our lives. We understand now what your work meant, the sacrifice you made for us. We never truly valued it." Victoria, with genuine tears this time, added, "Teresa, I know I was cruel to you. I know I treated you as if you were less than us. Now that I'm working in the kitchen, seeing how hard that work is, I understand I should never have looked down on what you did." Mark, the most broken of the three, could barely speak. "Mom, forgive me. I was a coward who failed you when you needed me most. I don't know if you can ever forgive me, but I want you to know that every day I work, I think about how to repair the damage I caused." I listened in silence, evaluating whether their words were sincere or just another desperate manipulation. Time would tell. 6 months after that meeting, something had genuinely changed in my children. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion of hard work, but a deeper transformation in their character. Daniel had developed a real humility he had never possessed. When he cleaned the offices, he greeted all the employees respectfully, from the executives to the security guards. He had learned that honest work, no matter what it was, deserved dignity. Victoria had become one of the most dedicated employees at the terrace. The chefs respected her because she never complained, arrived early, and stayed until everything was perfectly clean. She had learned to value every dollar she earned, because she now knew exactly how much effort it took to get it. Mark had found an unexpected calling in maintenance. He discovered he had manual skills he had never developed and a genuine satisfaction in fixing broken things. His coworkers respected him because he didn't act superior to them, despite his university education. But the most significant change occurred when they began their community service in the nursing homes. Seeing people my age abandoned by their families showed them a painful mirror of what they had been on the verge of doing to me. Daniel told me, with tears in his eyes, about a 70-year-old man who waited for visits that never came, about a woman who kept photos of children who hadn't called her in years. One Sunday afternoon, I received an unexpected call from the director of the nursing home where they volunteered. "Mrs. Teresa," she said, "I have to tell you something extraordinary. Your children have informally adopted several of our residents. Daniel comes on weekends to play chess with Mr. Isaiah, who hasn't had a visitor in 3 years. Victoria teaches cooking to Mrs. Stella, who was very depressed. Mark fixes residents' personal belongings without anyone asking him to." That information moved me more than I expected. This wasn't an act to impress me. They thought I would never find out. It was a genuine change born from their direct experience with the abandonment of the elderly. 8 months after the restaurant incident, I decided to do something I hadn't planned. I invited them to dinner at my new house. Not at the terrace, not on neutral ground, but in my home. When they arrived, I immediately noticed how they had changed physically. They were thinner, but stronger. Their skin was weathered from outdoor work, their hands calloused but confident. Maria prepared a simple but delicious dinner. During the meal, we talked like we hadn't in years. They told me about their jobs, about the people they had met, about the lessons they had learned. There were no pretenses, no lies, no attempts at manipulation. It was a real conversation between real people. Daniel asked for my forgiveness again, but this time it was different. "Mom," he said, "I'm not asking you to forgive me because I need your money or want my old life back. I'm asking for forgiveness because I finally understand the damage I caused. I understand that I robbed you of the dignity you had earned with 40 years of sacrifice." Victoria added something that surprised me. "Teresa, I've been thinking about changing my career. I want to formally study culinary arts. Working in your restaurant's kitchen showed me a passion I never knew I had. I don't want to go back to being the superficial woman I was before." Mark was the most honest of all. "Mom, I know I'll probably never fully regain your trust, but I want you to know that these past months have been the first in my adult life where I feel proud of who I am. Honest work has given me a self-esteem I never had when I was living off your money." At the end of the dinner, I made a decision I had been contemplating for weeks. I told them they could stop working in my businesses if they wanted. They had completed 8 of the 12 months I had originally set, but their transformation was evident. To my surprise, however, all 3 asked to continue. Daniel wanted to keep working as a janitor until he completed the full year. Victoria asked to stay in the kitchen at the terrace while she studied culinary arts. Mark wanted to continue with maintenance because he had found his true calling. 1 year after the incident that changed our lives forever, we organized a real family dinner, this time at the terrace, but in the restaurant's kitchen, not the elegant dining room. Victoria cooked for us, Mark had repaired the table where we ate, and Daniel had cleaned every surface until it shone. It wasn't a complete, magical reconciliation. Deep wounds take time to heal completely. But it was a genuine start. For the first time in decades, I was having dinner with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. That night, As I drove back to my mansion, I reflected on the year that had passed. I had lost children who were actually strangers, but I had found real people worth knowing. I had lost emotional parasites, but I had gained a family that had earned the right to exist. I didn't regret raising them. I only regretted not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-respect. That real maternal love sometimes requires teaching painful lessons to create decent human beings. At 70 years old, I had learned that it's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. 5 years have passed since that night that changed the course of our lives forever. Today, as I write these lines from my study overlooking the garden I love so much, I can say with certainty that the most difficult decision of my life also turned out to be the most liberating. Daniel never returned to the world of banking. After completing his year of work as a janitor, he decided to study hotel management and now manages 2 of my smaller properties, not because I gave them to him, but because he earned them, working his way up from the bottom, learning every aspect of the business. His employees respect him because he knows exactly what every job he asks them to do entails. He and Victoria divorced 2 years ago, not out of spite, but because they had both changed so much they were no longer compatible. She had found her passion in the culinary arts, and he had discovered that he valued simplicity over social appearances. It was an amicable separation between 2 people who had grown in different directions. Victoria graduated as a professional chef and is now the executive chef at The Terrace. Her transformation has been the most dramatic of all. The woman who once mocked my clothes now proudly wears her kitchen uniform, stained with sweat and honest work. Her dishes have won national recognition, and several top restaurants have offered her better-paying positions, but she prefers to stay where she learned the true value of work. She married one of the restaurant's suppliers, a simple man who appreciates her dedication and her story of redemption. They have a little girl, Hope, who is my first real granddaughter, not because she's the first biologically, but because she's the first to be born into a family that understands the value of genuine relationships. Mark found his soulmate in community service. He met a social worker named Carmen at one of the nursing homes where he volunteered. They married a year ago in a simple ceremony filled with true love. Together, they opened a maintenance company that specializes in adapting homes for the elderly. Their work gives them purpose and allows them to earn enough to live comfortably. I have 3 more grandchildren now, Mark and Carmen's twin 2-year-olds, who fill my house with laughter on Sundays when they come for lunch. Seeing Mark as a father has shown me the man he always could have been, but that circumstances never allowed him to become. My Invisible Mothers Foundation has expanded internationally. We have offices in 12 countries and have helped over 10,000 older women reclaim their dignity and their rights. The case I'm most proud of is that of an 80-year-old woman in Colombia whose children had her committed against her will to take her house. Our lawyers not only recovered her property but also set a legal precedent that protects other seniors in similar situations. I have written 3 books about my experience. The first, The Invisible Housekeeper, became an international bestseller and was adapted into a Netflix series. The rights to the story have generated millions of dollars that go directly to the foundation. It's ironic to think that the story of my humiliation became the source of dignity for thousands of other women. Maria, my housekeeper, has become much more than that. She is my housemate, my confidant, my chosen family. When her grandchildren come to visit, my house is filled with a joy I never experienced when my own sons were young, because this is a relationship based on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. At 74 years old, my health is excellent. I do yoga every morning in my garden, swim in my pool, and travel frequently, giving talks on dignity in old age and healthy family relationships. I have more energy now than when I worked as a housekeeper, because I am finally living for myself, not just for others. My sons and I have dinner together once a month, not out of obligation, but because we genuinely enjoy each other's company. Our conversations are real, our laughter is sincere, and our love is earned, not taken for granted. When Hope calls me Grandma Terre, with that smile that lights up the whole room, I feel a connection I never had with the abstract idea of being a grandmother. The restaurant where it all began has become a symbol of second chances. We have a policy of hiring people who have gone through hardship, single mothers, older people who lost their jobs, ex-convicts looking to reintegrate into society. The terrace is not just a prosperous business, it's a community of people who understand the value of earned dignity. Elias, my trusted partner, retired last year. At his farewell party, he told me something I'll never forget. Teresa, in 15 years of working with you, I never saw the poor housekeeper you pretended to be. I always saw the intelligent businesswoman you truly were. I was just waiting for you to see her one day, too. I have completely forgiven my sons, but not because I have forgotten what happened. I have forgiven them because they chose to change, because they worked to earn that forgiveness, because they became people who deserve my love and respect. Forgiveness was not a free gift. It was the result of years of genuine effort on their part. My lawyers have suggested I amend my will to include my sons again. I have decided to leave them a portion of my fortune, but the majority will still go to the foundation. They have learned to live on their own resources, and that independence has made them stronger. This morning, as I ate breakfast on my terrace, I reflected on the question all journalists ask me: do I regret taking such drastic measures? The answer is still no. Sometimes real love requires making decisions that seem cruel but are necessary for growth. I don't regret raising them. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the cost of self-respect. That respect is not automatically given for being a mother. It is earned with consistent actions. That it's never too late to demand the dignity one deserves. I always tell new mothers, love your children enough to teach them that relationships require reciprocity, that love without respect is disguised manipulation, and that your value as a person does not depend on how much you are willing to sacrifice. Today, I am a whole woman, not just a sacrificed mother.